the train, you just have one hand holding the trail, the other hand interacting with your mobile phone. You actually literally just have your thumb to interact and use your mobile phone, right? So we thought, oh, it would be interesting if we have a Tinder interface for fashion. And so people can browse new ins using a Tinder-like interactions, like when you swipe right, you like the item. If you swipe left, you don't like it. And at that time, we only just include this function in the app. People cannot check out immediately in the app because we think it's not the essential user experience we want to test. The most essential experience we want to test is whether or not the Tinder interface works for the fashion industry. And so it's an example of how you can try to streamline or stream down the scope of your MVP and focus on the one thing that you want to test the most. Another example is, because I know how AI is getting traction these days and everybody is very excited about using AI in their companies and startups. For example, we are working with a company to build a fitness mirror. So you will have a mirror, you will have access to all the trainers' videos, and then our software will analyze your movements and tells you whether or not your movement is accurate by comparing with the movement of that coach on the video. So it's whenever your idea involved AI or posture recognition or recognition, it always comes with some uncertainties. So if it is so, actually your first step would be conducting a proof of concepts to make sure the technology is ready first before moving on to build the front end and the back end. Usually the front end and the back end is relatively easy, but navigating AI or predictions or algorithm, it takes some time to fine-tune the result and performance. So if your idea involved technologies like that, then I would recommend you to go for a POC first. Okay, so another questions, like a lot of people like asking, so how long does it take to build an MVP? So I have these requirements, can you tell me about it? I once actually got 100 pages of requirements for an MVP, and this is just insane. Instead of like having me to tell you how long it takes to implement all the requirements on the list, I usually tell people around me to time box their development instead. Let's say you're just given like 3 months to build your MVP. We have to deliver it to the market rapidly, right? So because like time to market is key, you cannot wait a year for your MVP to roll out. So instead of saying like, look, to fulfill all your requirements, it takes 6 months, I would say if you are only given 3 months and 2 developers, what essential features you would like to include in your MVP? I think this is a very important mentality to time box yourself, because only, you know, human work with restrictions, then you will be able to like be the best of yourself and do something great. So time box your MVP development. Go back to what Aki just walked you through earlier today. You have 6 month business plan, right? So look into that and think about, okay, if I need my MVP done in 3 months, what am I going to do? So that's the mentality you should have. Okay, so a lot of case studies, a lot of examples of how you can approach your idea. So let's also have a look at the product development cycles as well, so that you can get yourself prepared. And I'm not going to go into technical details because like it would take a very, very long time to cover everything, but more is just some key terms so that you can research from there. So first of all, when we talk about software development cycle, it always comes with 3 parts. So we design it, we develop it, and we release it. And then we continue, the cycle goes on and repeats for the negotiations. And some of you may have already heard about some of the most common methodologies like Agile and Waterfall. It's okay if you don't understand these terms, but what I want to say is, again, the mentality. Agile works very well for startups because the mentality it advocates is how you should deliver work in small portions and rapidly so that we can constantly make a release and get user feedback, and then we reiterate it again. So this is the mentality that you should have, being able to roll out something really quickly. Don't always go into tedious discussions. I know sometimes how you want things to be perfect. It's the same here as well. I also have this problem, but just stick with the agile mentality, ship things fast and fail fast, and then you will be able to figure it out. So this is the big picture. I'm going to walk you through what you will be experiencing in each stage. For example, design. Actually, design is all about how you put yourself into the shoes of your user. So you actually need that user persona right first. You need to know what kind of customers you would like to serve, their demographic and psychographic as well. And then from there, we will be writing user stories to elaborate what sort of requirements we have, what sort of experience we would like to deliver in the app. So user story is slightly different from user requirements in the sense that in user story, we also tells you why the users want to have such feature. Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm building something like a Yelp, and if it is a user requirement, I may probably say, hey, I want to search, I want to be able to search a restaurant by its name. But if it is a user story, probably you would say something like this. As a user, I would like to search a restaurant by its names because I always forgot the locations of the restaurants I have visited. You see, the last sentence tells you why the feature should exist and under what scenario would a user be using this feature. It's very important to have that sentence in your user story as well, because this is how you align the expectations of developers, designers, and also QA engineers, so that your team can be able to put themselves into the shoes of their users as well. So they will be imagining themselves as a users when they develop their app. It's a very good exercise to align everyone on the same page. And then second of all, we will move on and create the user flow and wireframes for your application. In this stage, what we really care about is the user journey. And when I want to do something in the app, what are the steps that it requires? All we care is the user experience. We don't care about the UI right now, but you may be confused about what UI and UX is. So here's a very simple example. So what you're seeing is actually a elevator controls, all the buttons. So this is actually the UI. You see all the buttons there, the floor, the number. But then what UX exactly is about is, are you being able to get to the floor you want using this elevator controls? You see, it's so confusing here. When you want to go to the 4th floor, you have to press 2. When you have to go to the 5th floor, you have to press 3. It's just not how our common sense works, right? So this is exactly what UX is. How people use your app to accomplish what they want to do is not, sometimes it really takes some testing in order to know what the obstacles your users may have when using your app. And those obstacles, they are literally the UX of your app. And when we figure out the UX of your app with user flow and wireframes, then it's visuals. And UI is also very important, I think, because visuals also is a part of your experience, and visuals can enhance your experience of your app to make it more enjoyable and to make it a pleasure. And after we have done all this, actually we can do something called the usability test to see if your users to identify any major usability issues. Is there any things that blocks your user from using your app? And that's a very useful tool. You can check it out, called maze.design. All you have to do is to upload your design and create a few tests, and then you can blast it out to your friends to conduct to do those tests, and you'll be able to collect feedback. Because I feel like I'm running out of time. I actually have a demo, but I may not be showing it here, but I'll be sending it out, the link out in the chat room later on.
No worries.
Okay, so
no worries, Ten. What did you call the web link again?
I'm sorry, pardon.
This web link, what is it? Is that the one you want to demo?
Yeah, maze.design. So I just want to give you a very quick demo of how maze.design works and how you can conduct your usability test.
Please.
Okay, so I can't. Oh, okay, let me do it really quickly. So if you go to the landing pages, and you'll be able to have a taste of the demo yourself as well. Okay, so try me. So you do your usability test. You have some house rules as well. So you can create your house rules here. So here is an app that can help you find your favorite spots. And with Maze, you can upload all the design you have and create the little tasks, as I've mentioned. So the first task we have here is actually a walkthrough. So we want to know if your users find your walkthrough iterative, and let's see how it works. So learn how to use the app. So this is something that we tell the tester to do. So I'll be able to navigate and click. Okay, so I have finished the walkthrough, and then click get started. Then I've completed the mission, and you'll be able to set follow-up questions to see how, for example, this introduction of it clear. What do you think? And from here, you can collect some really early feedback on the usability of your app. Let's say it's actually very clear to me, and that's why I'm giving it a 4. So move on to the next task. You can set as many tasks as you like, but I would say keep it to the major user journeys you have. So now he asks me to find the restaurant by car. So let me go to this restaurant, the Big Fernand. Let's get started first. Okay, and then I have to go to the restaurant by car. I have to figure out the navigation, and I'll be looking at the screen. I cannot see anything related to car, right? But then when I click on walking, actually, I can switch to the driving mode. I've committed a mission, but you see, when you test it, I actually find this process a little bit confusing, because I would expect to see a switch instead of a drop down, and it doesn't look like a drop down to me anyway. And I don't feel like, well, it's something that I can click on for that walking button. So I would say maybe it's just a 3 this time, because the instruction isn't clear. So Maze is a very amazing tool because it's not expensive and it's very easy to set up your tasks. It's an amazing tool for you to get feedback from your users before you actually go into development.
Thank you.
Share. Okay, let me continue. So let's say I collect all the feedback, I go back to the design and I update it again. So what to expect in development? So let's say you're actually getting a team to do it. So I will only give you a very brief overview. So what we will do, basically, we will create a roadmap. So we will go to your design, and then we will see what are the features we're going to include in MVP. Probably we'll plan for phase 1, the first release, the second release as well. And our developers they will create all the tasks and break your software into small and manageable tasks. And then we work from there. I can show you an example of how we do it. We usually do it. This is actually an issue tracker. So what an issue tracker is basically is we put all your requirements up here, and then these are the tasks that developer will work with. You will see we actually have different labels for different tasks. For example, this is an enhancements task. This task belongs to this user story. And you also see text like reported by QA. So for example, if when you're testing the app, you find an issue, you can open an issue here in the issue tracker as well, so that we can have everything centralized in one place. And another tools we usually use is Kanban. So what you're getting here is just a list view, right? It doesn't show you the progress or the schedule. So sometimes we used Kanban to manage a development project as well. So we defined what we want, the funnel. For example, these are the to-dos, what we have to focus today, what is being WIP, waiting for code review done, and sometimes we have released it in this column as well. So it's a very powerful visualized tool. You just have to drag issues across the Kanban so that you'll be able to see the progress. And the most ideal situation is you have dragged all the to-do tasks, the cart, to the last column down, which means you have completed everything. So this is one of some tools you can consider to use if you want to manage your own tech team. Next. And testing is also a very important part of software development as well. You have to test it through before you release your app and launch it to the market. There are a lot of different tests in software development, and they have their own purpose. But what I want to share with you today is exploratory test, because we find that it works best for us, especially for consumer apps. Let's say I'm building a consumer marketplace platform, and probably you would need exploratory test. So what exploratory test is an unscripted test. So you will be recruiting, for example, 10 testers and ask them to test on their own and play the app and record and report any issues they see. We had a bounty program here, and whenever our testers find an issue, and he will get rewarded with points and money. And we find it very effective, especially for consumer-facing apps, to conduct exploratory tests to figure out all the major issues. A lot of firms or developers, they are very into functional tests as well. It's something that you can also consider, but probably at the later phase, because functional test, it is a scripted test, which means you have to write down all the steps for your testers to test your app. Very often, our experience is with startup, in the very beginning, your user flow and user journeys always change. It means you always have to update your functional test as well. So it may consume a lot of resources and time if we invest into functional tests too early. So do consider it when you have a more mature and stable version. Functional tests would be like awesome for making your system stable as well. So this is a very brief overview of what you would experience in development. And finally, when it comes to publishing your app on the App Store or Apple App Store or Google Play Store, actually, there are a lot of works. And it's where you have to think about the marketing of your app as well. So you have to prepare all the screenshots. You need to have intro, a very attractive description of your app, because to have people download your app, all this matters. This is the first page your users will see when they want to download your app. Whether or not you can persuade them to download your apps relies a lot on the screenshots and description. So do take the time to come up with really good copies. And now we're ready and get your app published and see if we will be getting downloads from the App Store. Okay, so now we have published our app. So what's next from there? Just a very high level overview of how you can make enhancement in iterations. Of course, first of all, you will be collecting user feedback, but this is a very common growth model we use in startup is AARRR. Probably some of you have already heard about this as well. Basically, is a form that define the success of your, if you are able to acquire a decent amount of users and be able to activate them and retain them, meaning they will come back and use your app the other day, refer it to your friends, and then you should be getting revenue and be able to monetize your idea. So the way we can iterate your app and make enhancement is based on the metrics. Let's say, for example, we worked with a startup client before. After we launched, the first thing we have in mind is actually acquisition. So how are we going to acquire more users? So we have this idea because the app we created is actually a marketplace for second-hand item. So the idea we had is actually to create a bot and we call other competitor sites. And whenever we find somebody selling their items on those sites, them a message or an SMS automatically and ask, hey, are you still selling your item? If yes, then we will be sending our app down to those people and see all about you also sell your item on our platform. So this is an example of how you can base your on key numbers, key metrics, and have very clear goal for your development roadmap. And lastly, I've talked about a lot of technical details, software development, but I really want to share that tech is only a part of your startup. Don't forget about selling, because this is how, when later on I reflected that my startups didn't work, because I thought it was communication with developer, and then when I reflected, it was actually I wasn't selling enough, especially as a non-technical founder. It's very important for your job to sell it to the market and be able to get market traction. So don't get lost in all these technical details and be overwhelmed. Focus on selling as well. So this is I'm sorry, I overrun, but this is my contact. If you want to chat about your idea, I'm very happy to be connected and grab a coffee. So this is what I want to share with you today.
Thank you very much, Dan. That was really interesting to see the back end of how, we develop tech projects, brought back a lot of memories.
Right.
When you're talking about iterations, user stories, I think some of us on this call are actually project managers or some kind of, we've done business analysis or some kind of, project lifecycle, SDLC. So that's really, really interesting. In terms of, I know we've overrun a bit. So the next session is at 12:50. So if we want to take a break, people can drop out and get their lunch, because Alex Cole will be talking to us about sales fundamentals and how do we build our sales cycle. We've talked about, user, customer persona, all of that. How do we bring it all together to actually generate that revenue? And I think that's really key, because we've built this fancy design, we've worked on this project, we've built our business plan, we've done all that. How do we actually sell the products? How do we get it to the hands of the people that are going to pay us back for all our effort? So 10 is actually a member of Female Tech as well. And we will be working in collaboration and working on projects. So feel free to contact out. I think when we're able to meet in person, we can have coffee and catch up. But their company are moving to United Kingdom, originally based in Hong Kong, right?
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
that,
so I'm actually in London right now to set up the company, the office in the UK. Yeah, very. So I do look forward to catching up with some of the like members in the communities as well.
yes,
I actually got linking connected requests already. I do look forward to chatting with you all.
yes. So we're in good hands if we have any technical, development that needs to happen. So does anyone have any question for 10 at this point in time? I think the question I have will be around, when you said MVP, how do we do what are the price band that we look at in terms of cost element? So if it's a minimum viable product, to build an app will be from X amount to X amount roughly.
Right. So this is a pretty tricky question because like it really depends on the service provider you're looking after, right? So for example, you can get yourself a co-founder, a technical co-founder who can build that products for you. Essentially, it's just sweat equity. If you're getting a freelancer, of course, the cost is a lot lower than getting an agencies, right? For example, freelancer, I think the rate ranges between like 80 pound per day to like 400 pound per day. The range can actually be pretty large. But for example, if you go for a freelancer, it may be at the lower end, the price tag, but you will need to uh, you will need to have more project management efforts yourself, be able to keep up with schedule and chat with the freelancer and communicate all the requirements well. But then you will have a more friendly budget for MVP. But then if you go for agency, they're more expensive, but then they got everything covered. You will have less, like you don't have to think too much about the technical details. I just walked you through and you can focus on selling. So I think it really depends on the type of service provider you will engage. But I would say 80 pound per day to 400 pound per day is the range that is like the market can offer.
Okay, so you talked about one of the apps that you built that is selling second-hand products, right? So,
Right.
so I know developing an app depends on the complexity, depends on the design, depends on the features that the user wants, how many users, etc. So,
Right.
I know it's quite expensive. We talked about no coding as well. So if I want to build an app, I'm just getting a feel of that example that you did, because I know people say, wow, it's too expensive. SMEs don't need an app, small, medium enterprises. What am I doing with an app? Do you get what I mean? So what are people looking at?
So are you asking like why do people still like create a mobile apps even though it's so expensive?
Yes,
Is it the question you're asking?
that's the question.
Well, I
This is
mean,
like the finger in the hair kind of cost for that one that you showed us. Am I looking at 50K? Am I looking at 10K? Am I looking at hundreds?
right. So I think for that one, the price point you will be looking at would be roughly around 550K pound to 70K pound, I would say, if you're working with an agency.
Mhm. And why is
Yeah.
there need
And
for people to build an app when you can easily just use Instagram or something? Why do I need an app?
right. So for example, let's take the secondhand like trading platform as an example. It's actually a pretty interesting story. The client we work with is actually an investor himself. So he invested in a lot of e-commerce startups. And then one day he said, oh, I know what is it to take to build an e-commerce startup. I know all the tricks already. I see startup failing, successing, being successful. So he wants to be one himself. And I think, although, yeah, you're right, you can run it on Instagram or Facebook, but it really comes down to the vision you have and the value you would like to provide. For example, in our app, what the value we want to provide is actually to connecting people in the neighborhood. So maybe secondhand item is just our first step, but there's so much more we want to do in the future. So really don't, of course, like for your MVP, I would suggest you to run properly your MVP on Instagram as well. But then when you're ready, when you're drawing the community, when you want to take it further, so creating your own platform, I think it worth the investment, and it's a very exciting journey.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for your time. So you will be joining the pitch session, aren't you? The one at
Yes,
2 to 10?
yes, I really look forward to it. We have 3 founders pitching their idea and companies, right?
Yeah, we have 4 actually.
Oh, 4, okay.
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 So we're gonna take a break. I think I need a break personally. I don't know about everyone else. I just need to grab something. We'll be back at 12:50. Don't leave. Make sure you come back because now it's gonna get more interesting. We need to knock that sales cycle. We need to get that in. So thank you everyone for hanging in there, and please don't forget to give us feedback, tag us, share, follow, let's keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you.